Pier 23 from 1951 sees a return of Hugh Beaumont to another cinematic detective role. Yes, Hugh Beaumont, the beloved dad of TV's Leave It to Beaver, is back again, playing a hard-boiled detective. It's Denny O'Brien, who is a San Francisco-based investigator who runs a boat rental business and takes on assignments on the side. And you know what? I had to check this one out. This is a short and enjoyable crime film that feels more like episodic television, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But let me first give an overview of the film, spoiler-free, and then I'll give some closing thoughts. Well, the film opens up with a voiceover, giving us an introduction from Beaumont as the character Denny O'Brien that sort of sets the stage of what's going on.
San Francisco. To the visiting fireman, tourist that is, San Francisco is a parlay of Fisherman's Wharf to Chinatown to cable car. But the natives are more inclined to sound off about the little gray home in the west, San Quentin. Or the Barbary Coast. Looks tame now, but it used to be the spot where vigilantes hung the people they didn't like. Then there's the Big Rock, Alcatraz Island. On a clear day, it stands out like the Statue of Liberty. Or the Embarcadero, which stretches from south of Goat Island clear up to the China docks. And crammed somewhere in the middle, about the same spot you find a belt buckle on a fat man, you'll find Pier 23. From there, it's an easy push to my place. It's a boat shop on the outside, but on the inside, it's a way to make a living. It sounds easy, but down on the waterfront, nothing's easy but the tide. So I rent boats and do anything else good men pay bad men to do. It's not all bad. Once in a while, something happens that makes you feel good. But most of the time, you got to get your laughs in a hurry.
So his living arrangement is that he shares his shop on the pier with a Professor Schicker, played by actor Edward Brophy. He's an ex-college professor and roaring drunk. The two of them apparently share one room, which is a little weird, but whatever. His first client shows up, and this is sort of the first half-hour mystery of the film. And this one involves a kindly character, Father Donovan, played by actor Raymond Greenleaf. He is a priest who hires Denny to intercept an escaped prisoner named Joe, who plans to break out of Alcatraz that night and will be arriving at Pier 23. The father just wants him brought to him so that he can talk to him and, basically convince him to go back to prison. Denny agrees to take the job, although the prospect of someone surviving an escape from Alcatraz seems unlikely, but anyhow, later that night, he sure enough finds Joe and talks to him. And Joe agrees that yes, he'll go and meet with the priest, but only if he can see his sister first. So they go to a hotel to meet with her, and it's here that Denny is knocked out, and when he comes to, he finds Joe is dead. Well, Denny continues his investigation that takes him to a ritzy nightclub, where he is eventually able to track down Joe's sister Anne, played here by actress Anne Savage, who was in one of my favorite crime thrillers of all time, the film Detour. Well, Denny continues his investigation, and this leads him from one sketchy character to another, in a mystery that ultimately involves some lost money. Now, each of these segments in the film, there's two of them, are roughly a half hour. I really can't go too much into the details of this without spoiling the ending, so let's just close this one out without giving away much more, and we'll get into the next case. So Denny is now back at his place on the docks, where he is hired by a wrestling referee, Mushi Cavelli, played by Johnny Indrasano. And his assignment is to pick up an envelope with a large sum of money following a wrestling match between two grapplers, Willie Klingle, played by Bill Varga, and Ape Danowski, played by Mike Mazurki. So Denny takes a job. He's sitting ringside watching this wrestling match, and he witnesses the character Klingle kind of get thrown from the ring and dies of apparently a heart attack. So following this, he goes to the appointed meeting place and demands the money from the manager, Nick, played by actor Peter Mamakos. Now, Nick, however, pulls a gun and demands to know what Willie had told him. Denny is able to overpower Nick, and then he goes with the envelope to the referee's apartment, where he finds the wrestler Ape and a woman are waiting. And when Ape grabs Denny, well, it's lights out for our hero, and this could be the end for him. But again, these were such short segments, I can't really go too much into the details here, so I'll wrap up the summary, and I'll let you check this one out for yourself. Now, what's odd is that I looked into finding these films, and I really couldn't find them streaming anywhere, even on Amazon Prime. There were only a couple kind of low-quality copies on YouTube, and I do see that this film was packaged with a DVD called Forgotten Noir Volume 9 with some unrelated movies, so that's a little odd. Now, best I can tell, it's not in the public domain, it's just hard to find. Well, anyhow, Pier 23 came out in 1951. It was directed by William Burke and was released by Lippert Pictures. And I know Robert Lippert Pictures don't have the best reputation. Usually they're cheesy and low-budget productions. But look, my thoughts on this was that it was a fine pair of detective stories combined into one kind of feature-length film at about an hour. And I thought it was an interesting formula, to see Hugh Beaumont playing this part-time boat shop operator and part-time detective. Now, he's previously played a detective as Michael Shane back in the 1940s. He was in 5 of those films. So this is one of 3 films that was released together by Lippert: Danger Zone and Roaring City, both of which were released in 1951 as well. And these also star Beaumont and Edward Brophy as basically the same characters. And you know me, because I seek out these strange and forgotten films on my channel. Well, my 3 fans can count on a future review of these eventually as well. Now, this idea that Hugh's character Denny more or less just lives at this boat shop with his pickled friend seems like it had the potential to be an interesting episodic series. I thought, they could kind of spin it off and do sort of the police procedural type formula where, between renting boats, he's off solving mysteries. And I understand this one isn't for everyone. I know. It's low budget, and there are going to be people who are turned off by kind of the non-stop witty banter and the jumbled stories that just breeze by so quickly. So if you watch this one, take it for what it's worth. And at the very least, just enjoy watching Hugh Beaumont in a considerably different pre-Ward Cleaver role. I think he does a great job here, and I actually kind of enjoyed these films. Edward Brophy as Professor Schicker made for an amusing side character, although his purpose in the story wasn't really clear. He's kind of this loquacious old guy that seems to be perpetually drunk, but I guess he's here as both comic relief and maybe to sort of help as a sidekick for Denny. I'm not really sure, but I thought he was kind of funny in the film.
Ah, Dennis, a drink for Mr. O'Brien. Something cheap but impressive.
Cut it out, Shaker. You gonna stay drunk all your life?
It's all a matter of willpower. I'm probably the only man in the world who intends to carry a hangover into eternity.
I was hoping you wouldn't be this far along tonight before I caught up with you.
Dennis, you can never catch up with me. But if you stop now, you can come in a good second.
Interesting thing about Brophy is, while researching other films he's been in, he was also well known as the sidekick to the character the Falcon that was played by Tom Conway in that film series of the 1940s. And he was also notably the voice of Timothy Q. Mouse in Walt Disney's Dumbo in 1941. And I want to make a note, it was nice to briefly see Anne Savage in the film. Very briefly, I have to say. She's not in here very long. And I guess that's really my main gripe with this film. I guess Lippert was intending for this to be a TV series, and these episodes just got kind of cobbled together into this film format. But it makes for stories that could really use a little more fleshing out, a little more character development. So some additional background. These films were unofficially based on the popular radio show Pat Novak for Hire, also known as Johnny Madero Pier 23. And this was a 30-minute detective radio series that aired in 1947. And it starred none other than Jack Webb, Joe Friday from Dragnet. as this wisecracking boat shop owner from San Francisco. And I listened to this on the Internet Archive, and it's pretty good, with some of that same sharp dialogue to the mystery. And I have this linked below if you want to check it out. Here's a little sample.
I drove down to Eddy Street and I parked near the Jade Club. Well, it's not a bad place, but on a slow night, even the winos are afraid to go in. Inside, it was dark enough to hide the decimal point on a check, and over by the bar, there was a piano playing music that nobody was listening to. And then Evelyn came out. And right off, he started hunting for the nearest fire exit. She had red hair about this side of 98 degrees, and she wore a black evening gown that held up by one strap and a prayer. She was the kind of a girl who could wear a Mother Hubbard and make it look like a negligee. And when she sang, it came out low enough to strike oil.
In any case, that's my review of the film Pier 23 from 1951 with Hugh Beaumont. You know, I thought it was a fine detective film, if super condensed and breezy. As I've said before, I like Hugh Beaumont in his pre-TV dad roles. I think he's got an easygoing charm and relatable character as an actor, and he's not overly glamorous or anything, but he's just got that everyman quality to him. And as for this film itself, it's a fair, low-budget Lippert production, just under an hour, with Beaumont playing this detective, solving various short and punchy cases. You know, I liked it, and I'll eventually review the other two in the series, but you can tell me off in the comments if you don't think I should. Pier 23, it was a decent crime film. It's one worth checking out.